Coins. Snacks. You ask, what do stunning coins and delicious snacks have in common?
Hi, I'm Jack McNamara, and I love stunning and rare coins. Oh, and I also love delicious and scrumptious food, too. Join me as I combine the best of numismatics and tasty treats into one show. Coin Snacks with Jack. Put down that tired bologna sandwich and spice up your lunch as I chat with some of the biggest names in numismatics and eat delicious snacks. From coin news and U.S. Mint releases to rare coins and numismatic oddities. From my all-time favorite coins to ancients and commemoratives, get your numismatic midweek pick-me-up with Coin Snacks with Jack. Plus, we'll eat snacks. Lots of them.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Coin Snacks with Jack. I'm your host, Jack McNamara, and because of this show, my wife no longer gives me dinner on Wednesday nights, which is fine. Make sure to keep watching Coin Snacks with Jack every Wednesday, noon Pacific. You can catch us streaming live on both YouTube and Facebook every week. So let's move on first off to some breaking numismatic news. The only 1822 half eagle available to collectors sold in a record-breaking auction last week. And while 17,796 examples of the capped bust half eagle were struck in 1822, only 3 are known to survive to this day. And 2 of those are secured in the Smithsonian Institute. So this third one has only been in 3 collections in the last 115 years. So this coin graded by PCGS. This legendary 1822 half eagle, gold half eagle, it sold for $8.4 million at auction, which sets the record for the most money paid at auction for a gold coin struck by the U.S. Mint. Actually, I'm pretty sure for any gold coin, period. This specimen was previously sold at auction as part of the Eliasberg collection back in 1982, and back then, almost 40 years ago, it brought $687,500. And, I mean, that was an incredible amount of money in 1982, and the Eliasberg collection was a very important collection, and this was a key to that collection because Eliasberg is the only collector ever to put together a complete collection of U.S. Mint coins. So every single date, every mint mark, every denomination that the U.S. Mint struck, Eliasberg had in his collection. So, of course, this coin, where there's only one available collectors, was, without this coin, he wouldn't have been able to say that he had the only complete U.S. collection. So, anyway, big deal coin, big news in the world of numismatics. Now, I just want to say thank you to everybody that gets this show on the air every week. We've got Chris, Joey, Sofer, Colleen, Nate, Elliot, Alex. You guys are the best. And before I reveal our guest, I just want to talk about my lunch special, Jack's lunch special, which will be available on our website until 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow. That's April 1st at 9 a.m. Pacific. Until then, we will be offering 10% off all of our Militaria collectibles. From the American Revolution to World War II, we've got rare military collectibles, including antique firearms, edged weapons, which is, swords and daggers and knives, uniforms, much, much more. So check out our website, rarecollectiblestv.com. There's no special code necessary. It automatically will give you that 10% discount on any of our military collectibles until 9 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. So now it's the time for our big reveal. Today we have an antique firearms expert and certified military appraiser who has been dealing with rare American military collectibles for over 30 years, specializing in a range of military equipment that spans from the American Revolution and the Civil War, World War II, even more recently, Vietnam. He has handled militaria from the most significant periods in U.S. history. Today, we have my friend, Peter Karlan. Hey, Peter, you trying to bone
hey,
up
Jack.
on coins
How
there?
You doing? Well, I thought I would prep because I don't know anything about coins.
That's okay. You don't need to. I don't know that much about militaria.
I thought you were going to start asking me about coins, so I was getting a little nervous here.
Well, thank you.
I know, like Morgan Dollar. That's a good one, right?
There you
penny.
go. There you go. There you go. That's all good stuff. No, when I first met you, we were in Gettysburg, and we toured the battlefields, and we picked up a phenomenal collection of swords. But when I came back, I kind of was like you were just now, except I had all those sword books that you referred to me, and I was trying to figure out what all this stuff was. So
yeah. Good days at Gettysburg.
Yeah, Gettysburg was awesome. So, okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty and kind of learn about you and the things you do know about, that you don't have to sit there reading the book to me, the things that you are an expert in, before we get into that, of course, it wouldn't be Coin Snacks with Jack without a snack. So, quickly, we are going to introduce Colleen to tell us what we are eating today.
Okay, Jack and Peter, since we have Peter Karlan here, as you just said, historian and military expert, we kind of went back to the era of the Civil War for our snack.
All
and
right.
It was going to be beef jerky and hardtack, but I just didn't want to do that to your stomach. So instead, you get chicken pot pie. And, since the ancient Romans have been putting meat in a pie crust and serving it. And so, it's evolved, and it was definitely a food that was a favorite, and now it's our fabulous go-to comfort food, because how can you go wrong? You can even eat your vegetables when they're covered in a creamy sauce with chicken and a delicious crust.
Yeah.
So I'm going to serve up a piece for you. We're going to share some with Peter, and look forward to your conversation.
Wow, that looks awesome. It smells awesome.
And we hope it is.
I'm sure it will be. I was nervous because I thought you were going to go back to the Revolutionary War, and I thought we were going to be eating our shoes. So I'm glad that we're not eating shoe leather today.
We wouldn't do that to you, Jack. Come on.
All right. So we are going to chow down here, but while we start getting the food prepared, let's dig into. Before we dig into the food, let's dig into a little bit about you, Peter, and military antiques. So, I got started in coins and numismatics as a kid. My grandfather was a collector, and it was something we did together, and that's how we connected. How did your interest in militaria and antique firearms, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I guess it was, my uncle served in World War II. He was a navigator of a B-17 bomber, and he flew missions over Germany. And my uncle Nathan Datlow, give him a shout out. He's no longer with us, but he actually was a big influence on my life. And as we grew up and I got to know Uncle Nat a lot more, he didn't really talk much about the war until later on, because we were always asking about it. And he brought back a number of souvenirs. He actually was shot down on a 7th mission over Hanover, Germany. He was taken prisoner of war, and he spent about 3 years in prisoner of war camp. And Patton came through and liberated his camp outside of Munich. And he brought a bunch of souvenirs back, which he gave me, and that kind of and hearing the war stories and hearing, his stories of that kind of sparked my interest. Later on down the road, I was like 17, 18 years old, and I was out hitting garage sales, and because I was kind of a young antique dealer, and I happened upon a big collection of, bayonets and swords at a yard sale in Boonton, New Jersey, of all places.
Boonton.
And I bought a few of those. Yeah, Boonton, New Jersey. And so I bought a couple bayonets, and I just started, obviously incurable collector from there on in, just like probably the coin guys, or the coin gals, So that's where it started, and then I just started collecting, and I was incurable since then.
It's funny. It does seem like whatever people collect, whether it's coins or military or sports or art, it is like a gene or a bug or something. Like it's like once you kind of get your hooks into something like that, it's just like an insatiable desire to look for this stuff and research it and find it, and
Yeah.
I definitely get it. So can you tell us a little bit about what eras of Militaria that you specialize in?
Pretty much all areas. I'm actually a credentialed appraiser with the International Society of Appraisers, and obviously I started in this industry, when I was about 18 years old, and I'll just say I'm over 50 now, so it's been quite a time. But really, my interest span from the Napoleonic Wars, from the French and Indian Wars, from the English Civil War. I actually did my undergraduate work in England, and I lived in England for a while, and I studied over there. So that was a big that was a big influence. And so I used to go around to the different battle sites in England and from the English Civil War, and actually went and visited the Cambridge Cemetery where some of my uncle's crew was buried. And so, realistically, from the 1600s, from the English Civil War, the Napoleonic Wars, all the way up through World War I, World War II, the Civil War, obviously the Revolutionary War, all the way up to Vietnam, pretty much, and it covers through the Vietnam War, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And is there one specific time period or war that really speaks to you, and if so, why?
Yeah, so I've always been intrigued about World War I. World War I, obviously the war to end all wars, right? Trench warfare just was brutal in every single way. There's a photo of me at the actually, that was the museum in France, the Army Museum in France, and those are all Napoleonic period cannons and earlier that Napoleon captured. That's actually a French Renault tank, and that's the period that I'm kind of talking about.
So that's a World War I era tank right there.
Yeah, that's a Renault First World War tank. That's actually in the Army Museum in France, in Paris.
And is World War I the first era that used tanks?
Yes, that was the first mechanized warfare, the first battle that tanks were introduced in the history of warfare was at Cambrai, which was a battle on the Western Front. And, could you just even imagine the infantry soldiers seeing these hulking pieces of steel coming across the barbed wire and just, lighting people up, it's just right. Like, I couldn't even imagine. I actually was fortunate enough before COVID, obviously, to go and buy a large collection in France. And in that trip, I visited, Normandy. The collection was actually in Normandy, and I visited the battlefields in Normandy and the American Cemetery. And I actually went to Verdun, which is one of the biggest battles during World War I. It was like a bucket list moment for me. I've always wanted that's at Verdun. That's at Fort Douaumont, which is one of the forts in Verdun during the First World War, and it's just amazing place. The entire landscape looks like the surface of the moon with all the craters from the artillery shells. So over 1 million artillery shells fired in and around that area. That's a gun emplacement there that is outside of France. A very brutal war. I was always interested about it. I do collect World War I items, and it's just an amazing period of time. And it's just, when you think about that, you can't even imagine what those guys went through.
Right. Yeah, I'd love to go visit. It's interesting, like in Europe, because so much of this warfare took place over there. We went there. My grandfather actually fought in World War II, the one who got me into coins, Howie Enders, and he was in Belgium and France. He never really spoke about it because he saw a lot of, stuff that was pretty horrific, so he never really talked about it much to us. But, we went over actually for a wedding for a friend of ours in kind of the northern part of France, and it's funny, like, you go out in their property, they had a pretty big piece of land, and there's just like a plane in the field that's been there for since World War II. It's just weird to see. Like, we don't see stuff like that here, where these kind of artifacts and memories and things of this horrible event that happened. But there's so much history there.
Yeah, I mean, history to us is, the Revolutionary War is ancient history here. But when you go, you walk down in London and you see parts of the Roman ruins, and you're like, no, that's old,
Right.
It's like, it's all relative, and it's just amazing. Like you're talking about, you drive through these areas in France and every cemetery is just filled with, the people who gave it all for their country, So
Right.
just interesting.
Right. What do you think our fans here would be interested in collecting, or excuse me, what? Why? Why do you think our fans here would be interested in collecting Militaria items?
Yeah, collecting, like you said earlier. Are you digging in there, Jack? I got mine here. Is that? Hold on a second.
It's really good.
Wait.
I've had a few bites.
I'm gonna hit that up in a second. Yeah, I'm glad we're not eating hardtack and beef jerky or our shoes like the folks in, at Valley Forge, right?
Exactly.
So, crossover collectibles. I mean, obviously with coins and it's all about history. It's all about, with the coins, it's history. It's our history. It's American history. I know you guys do a lot with, American coins, but the crossover between the Revolution and the American Civil War and the War of 1812, a lot of those images are found in Militaria and also in the coins, the eagle, the federal eagle, the early eagles, Liberty, the Liberty cap. Those are iconic images of our history, right? There's a crossbelt plate from the Civil War, right? That's just it. That says it all right there. You could find that kind of image on a crossbelt plate that a Civil War soldier, an infantry officer wore, and you can find a similar image on a coin, And I'm not sure if any of those artists, crossed over. I'm sure they probably did, but I think it's all about the history and the time periods. There's a U.S. Oval. That's one of the most iconic images of the Civil War. That's a belt plate that just about every infantry officer would wear, infantry soldier, enlisted man would wear. So I think it's really all about the history and about that, the images. And if you look at, a lot of people collect Civil War images of the soldiers, and they have those belt plates, and you collect the belt plate and then the image, and he might be carrying a Colt revolver or some of the swords and the presentation swords and all that kind of stuff. The images of the American images are found throughout both coins and Militaria of that period,
Right. And it's
Burns
funny,
like carbine right there. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I find that in high school, I was never, history wasn't my favorite class necessarily, but as I got more and more into coins, I find myself wanting to learn more about the history. And then as I learn more about the history, I want to collect more of these related things. So I totally get it. It's like I see these items and I'm just like, I can't believe this thing exists and it's 100 years old or 200 years old, or, it's such a link to kind of our past and who we are as a nation. And, there's so much there. And then, like you said, you find one thing and it spurs an idea. You want something else, you get a coin from the Civil War era, then you go, oh, I'd love to have a gun or a belt plate or some kind of piece of a uniform or something that could have been worn at Gettysburg or Antioch or one of these. It does build on itself.
Right. Yeah. First you get the pistol, and then you want the uniform and the belt, and it goes on. It's endless, you know. And I've actually collected a number of different collections over the time period, and I'm on like my third or fourth collection now. So it's just like we're really incurable. We're true addicts in a good way, you know. It's better to be addicted to this stuff than other things, you know. And it's always interesting. I'm going to eat some pie here, so hold on.
Go for it. And you know, I'm glad you talked about, you know, collecting, you know, putting together multiple sets of things, because, you know, I was going to ask you, you know, numismatics, there's so many ways to collect. You know, you can come up with any different way. You know, a lot of people collect, you know, what we call a typeset, where you're trying to get, you know, one coin of every different design, you know, maybe of a certain era, every coin made in the 20th century or something like that. Other people focus on, you know, certain denominations. You know, I just like $20 gold pieces, or I like, you know, silver dollars. You know, other people, time periods, you know, Civil War, very popular period. People try and find as many different coins from that era. You know, what are the different ways to collect militaria items? You know, or do some people only collect guns or edge weapons, or do other people try and get full uniforms from certain wars? Like, what are some of the kind of popular ways to collect?
Yeah, I mean, there is. It's kind of like that's the thing about collecting. It's all individual. It's like whatever you like. There's no set. Guidelines in collecting. You know, so. But I always encourage people, if they're collecting, to have some kind of strategy or have some kind of idea about what period, and be, you know, as an appraiser, I go into a lot of different houses, and I go in and look at giant collections, and I work with a lot of different, you know, executors, and people unfortunately pass away, and the collection comes out. And so when I go into a home, I can see if the person that originally owned those items had some kind of strategy in collecting. Were they buying quality, or were they buying price, or were they just buying whatever they saw that they liked? And there's no right or wrong to any of that. But, you know, in our industry, and obviously in coins right now, with our marketplaces and a global marketplace and everything like that, is people are still really interested in putting their money into liquid assets, into hard assets, right? And you know, I would have thought through COVID that this would have maybe slowed down or something like that. It hasn't. People are always. That's the thing about collectibles and coins and militaria and whatever else is out there, is that people are really passionate about collecting, right? And they want to collect guns, revolvers of the Civil War, swords of the Civil War, long arms. But again, once you get bitten and you become incurable, it's hard to stay on track. It's hard to stay in your lanes, you know? That's a KGK sword. That's a Southern sword. That's made by Kraft, Goldschmidt and Kraft of Columbia, South Carolina. That is a Southern sword that was made during the Civil War. Those are very, very highly collectible, you know? So, but there's no real right or wrong answer, but all of these things are highly collectible, and I think it's personal to every collection that I've ever looked at is different, you know, and it's unique to that person and what they liked, you know.
I've always thought it was cool, you know, for myself. I've always kind of thought about, and I've never done it because I'm so squirrel, you know, but I always thought it'd be cool to do almost like, you know, we talk about a typeset where like you're trying to get every single, you know, say $20 gold piece. You're trying to get a St. Gaudens with motto, St. Gaudens no motto, Liberty Head. I always thought it'd be cool to do a set of almost like a typeset of like the kind of iconic gun from like each major war, like a Brown Bess from the Revolutionary War, and then, you know, whatever, an M1 Grand, and, you know, like kind of like, and like build a collection that way, kind of where you're, you know, not focusing on one era, but kind of doing like the kind of iconic firearm from each era, or edge weapon, you know, or something like that.
Right, and actually, that's a very good point, because there are guys that I know, and there are collections that I've seen and collections that I've bought, that all they did was bought each type of of U.S. military long gun or U.S. military pistol. And they started off with the 1795 Springfield, all the way up to the Colt, the Colt that they used in Vietnam, the Colt, the SP1 or whatever it is. I'm not big on, modern guns. I'm mostly an antique guy, but all of those spots, like the 1795, then the 1816 Springfield, or just Springfield rifles, or just, so there's so many different ways. And I think that it's really good that you can make your own collection based on how it fits you, and what you're interested in. And like I said, there's no wrong way to collect, but there is a strategy that long-term probably would be beneficial to like, if you think about you want to collect, and there's a gentleman that I know that collects belt plates, United States military belt plates, and he has probably the best collection in the world, surpassing the Smithsonian, believe it or not. And there are, world class identified Revolutionary War belt plates that were worn by the soldier. So, this gentleman has a world class belt plate collection, only U.S., only military, but the scope of it is just incredible. So, like you're saying, there's no real wrong way, but to try to kind of have an intelligent collection, it would probably benefit you long term. And it's the same thing with what you guys do with coins. You have an advisory team, and somebody really wants to be serious about what they're buying, and they say, hey, listen, I would like to put a collection together. You actually have people that help those folks.
Your a little of your tutelage, hopefully we'll be doing the same thing with military collections, helping people build these type of collections we're talking about right here.
Right.
Right. And I'm sure a lot of people, I would imagine, depending, people who were in the service, I'd imagine people collect things from their branch of the military, for example. I'm sure there's guys who are in the Army or the Air Force that only collect that branch of the service.
And Marine Corps is a big one, actually.
Yeah.
Marine Corps, people just collect Marine Corps stuff. It doesn't matter. It could be anything Marine Corps, They just love Marine Corps because a Marine is a Marine. My godfather was a Marine, and he was, a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, right? And so they're very, a lot of those guys are really hardened collectors. They're ardent,
Mm-hmm. Now, in coins, we use a 70-point scale to determine the quality of a coin. 70 is perfect. 1 is you can barely tell what it is. Is there a system like this for any of the military items, like edge weapons or firearms or anything?
In firearms, there is, and it's graded by an NRA grade. There's basically a grading sheet or a grading guidelines that's put out by the NRA for gun conditions, right? But like you, it's universal in collecting. Is condition is everything, right? Everybody says condition is everything. Condition. And that's when I go into some of these collections, people were really concerned about condition, or they were just kind of like, they just like bought whatever they saw, and they were an impulsive buyer, right? So I think obviously condition really matters in every category of collecting. In military category, if you have a sword that has a really nice polished blade with engraving, and the engraving is really frosty on the blade, and then you have another one that you can't even read the engraving, it's obscured, it's been sharpened off. Obviously, which one are you going to want? Right. So it's kind of the same thing with the grading the coins. You always want to pay attention to condition. Obviously, the things that I deal, they were used in wars, they were used in battles, and actually some of the guys. And I think we had looked at some K-bar fighting knives yesterday, actually. And one of the K-bar fighting knives, it was pretty worn out, but it had the guy's name on it and his unit and everything. So there you have provenance. You have something that somebody really used in combat, in battle. It had his name on it, had his regiment on it. It was researchable. And so if you have an item like that, the condition really is, it's kind of negligible, because you're buying the history and you're buying the provenance. You're not really buying the condition, right? So you're buying something that you can really research. If the guy did any heroics in battle, if he was a Silver Star winner, or if he won the Medal of Honor, obviously it just gets more and more expensive. But condition definitely matters.
Right. It sounds like, again, same as any other collectible. You've got condition is huge. Something worn out or something that's in great shape. You've got obviously the story, the history, the significance of it, the rarity, of course, something that you can't identify. You can, you can go to a antique show or something and you can buy 10 of them versus something that we know this belonged to this one guy and it's unique. You couldn't replace it. It's, obviously that's the rarity of it. And, they're all tied again to the historical significance. You have something that's brand new, never used, but you don't know who it was, who, maybe it was never issued versus, something that's broken and bent, but it belonged to Grant or George Washington. Obviously it's,
right.
People
exactly.
are going to want that.
Exactly.
So it is a kind of a dance, but those are all the kind of components. When you have them all, obviously that's, you have something phenomenal condition and it's, unique and it has a historical context, then that's
right.
like the perfect storm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Now with swords, I know there's some that are called presentation swords, and again, some of them, I'm sure if you know who's presented to, that's worth a ton of money in some cases. Now, can you explain kind of what are these swords? Why were they given to individuals? What's that mean?
Yeah, obviously, throughout history, the sword is not only a symbol, something to use in combat, but it's also it's also denotes rank and stature, So basically, the presentation swords, especially from the Civil War era and prior, that one that you're picturing right now is a Congressional presentation sword, and that one is actually in stock at RCTV right now. And that one was given to a gentleman that was engaged in a very famous naval battle during the War of 1812. Congress presented those swords to only a very select few midshipmen that basically performed heroically in battle. And that one was presented to a guy who actually was wounded in action and died of his wounds later. That hilt on that sword is solid silver, and it's made by the most famous sword makers in American history. So it's like that one is just a blow your mind presentation swords. There's other presentation swords that I know of that go in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're very, very highly collectible because of the history. So you could have the research is endless when it comes to presentation swords. Obviously, there are also, on the other side of the spectrum, there are some swords that are presented to people, but they didn't see battle, they didn't see action, the unit might have not done anything, they didn't participate in a lot of engagements, they were just kind of like guarding Washington or something, never really saw action. Those ones maybe not so much, but also the sword maker has a difference in regards to price also. But these swords, especially during the Civil War, were presented to officers as they were either going off to war, they were presented privately, they were presented by their units, by their regiments, and it was basically a really nice gift that was saying, we're presenting you with this presentation sword, use it in battle, use it, to the glory of the Union, or put it on the shelf. It's like a gift. So it kind of ranges from one side. I just had one presentation sword not too long ago that had a guy, it was a very small little identification on the hilt, and it was a guy's unit, and it had a really pretty good battle history. He was I think he was at Gettysburg, he might have been at Antietam, he was at, and so even though it wasn't a very illustrious, like really fancy Tiffany presentation sword, the guy had really good fighting history. So that's what the collectors are looking for.
Right. Well, it's like the one we showed on the screen that we have available now. I mean, 1812 presented by Congress versus, like you said, these were presented, could be presented by anyone, like their family, their town was, you were the town hero going off to war. Here's this sword, for good luck, and we're proud of you. And, like you said, did the guy go and, take the sword given to him by his little town and end up not really seeing action and use it for a letter opener? Or is it a guy that Congress only gave a few of these out, War of 1812? The thing might have a little bend to it, but this guy died in battle, and this was a sword presented not by Congress, who hardly, as you've taught me, didn't give out very many of these, especially going back all the way to the War of 1812, 200 plus years ago. I mean, that's a big deal. That's a rare, a rare item.
Very, 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 very rare sword. Solid silver, just unbelievable story. If you read the story, I think it was the reindeer that the guy was served on, and it's just an unbelievable story on that sword. And I mean, there are other items that, like there was a rifle that was known, and it was, I think, a Sharps carbine, I believe, and it was presented either by Lincoln or to Lincoln. And on the patch box, it said presented by President Lincoln or to President Lincoln. And, it's like stuff like that. Or, I mean, that sword, that Congressional presentation sword, is a national treasure. There's no doubt about it. There's only so many of them. That one is one of them. It had one repair on the blade, but it is the original blade. And when you get to this level, that little condition issue there, can be overlooked because of the importance and the significance of the sword. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly.
So
it's like in coins, for coin people, I can compare it to, say, a 1924 St. Gaudens, which is a wonderful coin, a beautiful coin. But there were hordes of these found, and you could get one in mint state 69 even. I mean, it's still expensive. There's not that many, but you get a coin that's pretty close to perfect. Now you go back to the 1850s, the New Orleans mint. There's some of these coins where there isn't a single coin known in uncirculated condition. If you get a coin that's extremely fine or something like that, it's still, $800,000 coin, $1 million coin, because they're so rare. So you accept the fact that it might not look like a brand new coin, a proof 70 coin you bought from the mint, that came out a couple years ago, for example. When you have a coin that's historical, and same thing like you're saying here. You can get something that's a modern issue piece of equipment, I'm sure, that's basically brand new. But when it's from 1812 or the Civil War or anything like that, you're going to have to forgive a little bit of the condition, especially if you want something so unique that who it was presented to, where it was used, and especially someone who has a valiant story where they really they really did give themselves for the better of the country.
Absolutely.
So talking about these rare items, in the coin business, I've gotten to see some pretty rare coins. I'm amazed. There's things I only dreamed of as a kid. I'd see them in the front of the Red Book and fantasize about them. I didn't think I'd ever see these things in person, and now I pinch myself once in a while. What are some of the rarest and most significant pieces of Militaria that you've had the chance to deal with?
Well, it's like cataloging 30 years of buying stuff. It's hard to try to figure that. But I mean, there was one pistol I had recently, and it was a presentation pistol. I actually wrote an article in the North-South Trader magazine, which is a Civil War magazine, about the pistol, and it was given to the colonel of the regiment, a New York regiment, and it had his name written across the back strap. It was a presentation pistol. Right, it was a pistol that was presented to him when he went off to war, and he actually was wearing this pistol when he was fatally wounded at Chancellorsville, and he was the colonel of the regiment. And I got a call one day, and somebody offered it to sell it to me, and I bought it, and it was such I started researching it, and it was such an incredible story because the guy The guy fled from Germany because there was a revolution in Germany, and he came here, like so many other immigrants did throughout the during the 19th century. And he wound up in New York, and he was actually a soldier in Germany. He joined the New York German Legion, they called it. He wound up leading the regiment. He was the colonel of the regiment. This was his pistol. It had his name on it, the presentation, and he was actually fatally wounded at Chancellorsville. And actually on the grip of this pistol, there was a little bit of a chunk taken out of the pistol, and you can only imagine, I wasn't there, so I don't know, but you can just imagine that happened when he fell, and it's just like you think about it, and you're just like, just kind of blown away, Wow. And, but I've had so many cool things. I mean, Southern flags and all kinds of crazy stuff, throughout the years. The identified stuff has always gotten me pretty good because I like to do the research and I love to know the history about these things, it depends. That's one of many, maybe hundreds and hundreds of items that I had, which were really pretty cool,
Well, I know too, actually, when we were in Gettysburg, for me, it was awesome because, first off, it's just amazing to be there. But to be there with you was so cool for me because I had kind of like my personal docent who, is explaining stuff to me. But I was just thinking also about, some of the larger arms you may have handled. I know I'm looking at these cannons and you're going, oh, yeah, I've sold those. What are some of the bigger, I know you've handled some cannons. We actually have a small cannon in stock right now. But I know you've handled some cannons.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if I can pull it up on my phone and show you, but so I love artillery. I'm a big artillery guy, and I actually just bought one, and I'm, obviously I have a very forgiving and understanding wife, but I just bought I'm trying to pull it up on my phone here, but I love artillery. I love tubes. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I'm going to try to pull it up for you.
Let's
See this one here.
Oh yeah.
I just bought that. I just bought that.
Well, you tell your wife you need to keep the family safe.
It's a 3-inch howitzer made by the Royal Gun Factory in 1895. It was a World War I. I was telling you about World War I. It's like talk about being incurable, right? I just bought a World War I, field howitzer with the case on, with the limber and everything on it. It comes in 2 pieces. So obviously,
what
I have a terminal case here. I cannot be cured. I'm sorry.
What country was that? Was that cannon? Who it is?
That's British. British. I actually collect pre-1918 British Militaria, and I think it goes back to my time in England. When I lived in England, I did my undergraduate work in England, and I just fell in love with the country. And the British Army has just such a rich history. So I collect all kinds of British stuff. I collect, lance caps, headgear, swords, sabre. If you ever look at a Victorian British soldier, they were looking good when they were going into battle. You know what I'm saying? That was part of it. The officers, the quality of the clothing and the headgear and the belt plates. We're talking fire gilded bronze. The swords, it's just everything about the British. They just did unbelievably. They just went over the top. So I kind of collect British pre-World War I stuff. I have a pretty substantial collection of it. My wife would say I have an illness. But when you're buying 3-inch howitzers, obviously I have a terminal case.
So it sounds like that howitzer is that isn't something you're buying for a client or for inventory. It sounds like that's coming home. That's for your collection.
Yeah.
Weren't you telling me you're trying to make room in your garage for your Mustang? It sounds like that's not happening anytime soon.
No. Mustang is in the storage unit. I have a problem. As I used to say to my wife, I have problems.
So where is that do you put that on the front lawn for the neighbors, or where do you put something like that?
Actually, Actually, it's so bad, Jack. I got to tell you, I just bought a commercial building because I was just out of room. I bought a 1947 Sinclair gas station that I'm restoring to 1947 fashion with the pumps and the signs and everything. And it's going to be my man cave, my showroom, my storage, my by appointment stuff, my sorting spot, it's in Monroe, North Carolina. I'll give Monroe, North Carolina a plug. A little town outside of Charlotte.
I love that, and you kind of told me about that the other day. Like, I love that even though it's not Militaria, like, I could see myself doing the same thing. Like, you're such a kind of history geek that you buy an old gas station, and instead of just renovating it to modern, you're going to make it a 1947 gas station, even though you're not going to pump gas. You're using it for an office and a storage space. That's awesome.
Absolutely. When you pull up to, it's just when you drive up to it, it's going to be like stuck in 1947. It's got the Sinclair. The other thing I have in my garage right now, which my wife kind of just my daughter loves, but my wife kind of scratched her head, was the 8-foot cast aluminum green Sinclair dinosaur that used to don the roofs of the old gas station that I found in Texas and I had shipped to me.
I'm starting to think that when you go to your house, it's like the Addams Family. You got dinosaurs, you got cannons. Like, this is kind of intense. You got like Uncle Fester, Lurch. Like, who else is over there?
Actually, believe it or not, if you walked into my house, you wouldn't ever know what I did, because the agreement was that I have my office and I have the garage, not one stick of anything else in the main house. So it's, like, marriage is a compromise, right? So marriage is a compromise. And, this was the compromise when we bought the house. I said, my office is like Vegas. What happens in my office, it stays in my office. You don't have to ask about it. It stays there, and just close the door. Don't look, kind of thing. And
if she went in there, she'd probably think you're staging a coup or something with all the antique firearms and swords and stuff. Right.
She's a great lady.
So with our fans, obviously we're big history buffs. You're a big history buff, with the gas station, the World War I. Could you walk us through, like, for our other history buffs who are watching us here today, kind of what was some of the standard equipment that guys carried in, like, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War? What were these guys using?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's funny you said that, because one of the items that I just looked at that we're going to put up on the website here shortly is a committee of safety style brown vest. It's actually called a officer's Fusel, and a Fusel is like a officer's musket. So obviously Revolutionary War was pretty much, you got your cartridge box, your bayonet, your musket, and that's pretty much it.
Right, you're lucky maybe if you had shoes.
Maybe a fighting knife. You got your shoes, right? We're talking militia. We're talking, the Continental Army was not, it's just like kind of getting going, and it's just the story of the American Revolution is just amazing in every single way. But, you keep on advancing until, you see what the guys carry today, and it's just amazing. But, standard infantry weapons, cartridge box, belt plate, bayonet, fighting knife, whatever that is. But then in World War II, then you have, it gets more, you can see the progress of the warfare as you go through the wars. That's the interesting thing about the military. It goes from very primitive to really advanced as you go along. And right. The Germans during World War II, the stuff that the Germans were making World War II is just amazing. That, I mean, talk about the greatest generation. I mean, the equipment that the Germans had during World War II is far superior to anything that we had. The only thing I think that leveled the playing field during World War II was the M1 Garand rifle. There's one of the German helmets that we have up online right now. It's really nice, all original paint. It's got a beautiful liner. But yeah, like the German army during World War II was just, they had the first machine gun, they had the first jet fighter, they had the V1 and the V2 rockets, They had the Panzer tanks. They had the Tiger tanks. They had, I mean, their technology was just unbelievable, you know? And, but we had the heart and we had the guts, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like your uncle or your grandfather, whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and both my uncles served in World War II also. So.
Yeah, and you know, for those of viewers who are watching, you know, as Peter, you're mentioning some of these items, you know, the helmet there and the Congressional sword. You know, you're mentioning kind of these are up on the website. You know, you're talking about our website here, rarecollectiblestv.com. So anybody, you know, this stuff that Peter's talking about, a lot of this is available. Peter is an expert in this area for 30 years, but he's you know, our expert here as a consultant at Rare Collectibles TV. So he helps us find these items, authenticate these items, look for, you know, the best quality stuff. And we have a lot of this stuff listed right now on our website, and we're adding more and more. Thanks to your help, Peter. Really appreciate all this stuff. Your amazing stuff you're helping us with here, because it's a lot of fun. But I did want to just make sure people realize that, you know, a lot of stuff is available on our website, and we do have a special 10% discount running through tomorrow morning too. You know, if anybody's you know, like me, starting to you know, the collecting bug starting to itch a little outside of the primary area, it's a good place to start would be going to our website, because there's some pretty remarkable stuff from a lot of different eras. Oh, look, that's a Bowie knife, is that, or no? What's that one? What do we got?
That's a Plains War period hunting knife. Actually, it's yeah, it's definitely that's a, you know, a Plains War period. You know, 1880s. That's a U.S. government issued knife. It's interesting. Yeah, the thing about, I mean, the thing that attracted us to each other is, and what you're doing here at RCTV is just so amazing, because, you know, we want to keep the collector community going. You know, we want more people interested in it. We want to build the new collector community, you know, and you all are at the cutting edge. This is something nobody else is doing. You guys are, you have the technology, you have the infrastructure, you have this, you know, you have this all available to yourself here at the company. And it's a great way to kind of, that's a great helmet right there. That's a World War I identified. Right? Yeah, 516th Engineers Doughboy helmet. That's unresearched. That came in a big collection that we sourced, and it basically came this way. It's up on your website right now, on the RCTV website. And I'm just glad to partner with you guys to make sure to, you know, to help source this stuff and get it out there and try to reach more people, reach more collectors, and rebuild and build on that collector community.
This World War I helmet, that's Friedrich. Do you know, is that a map? I was trying to figure out when I saw that painting. Is that supposed to be a map? Do you know what that represents?
Well, during World War I, actually, they used to camouflage paint their helmets, and the ones that are really highly collectible are the German World War I model 1916 helmets, and they're, you know, the steel helmets, and the British did it and the Americans did it. This one, that pattern is actually kind of reminiscent of the camouflage pattern that they would use during World War I. Of course, this one is not meant for combat. This was a souvenir. This is kind of falls underneath the umbrella of trench art or folk art, you know? And so you have the American eagle on one, the American flag on one side, the German flag on the other side. The symbol in the front is the insignia of... No, those are German colors, I believe. Yeah, the French is blue, red, and white. So this is like, this signifies, in my opinion, the conquest of Germany by the Americans. This was probably at the very end of the war, because this thing is in so high condition. If you look inside, the liner is like dead mint condition. The chin strap is there. It even has the original label on the inside. But this is something that this guy Friedrich wanted a souvenir of his service during the First World War. Obviously, he served with the 516th Engineer Battalion. That insignia in the center, that's the insignia of the United States Engineers. You know, so it basically is kind of a memorial of his service in World War I. the combat helmets that were used wouldn't have all those bright colors, but because you'd be like a target, you know.
Right.
It's like, hey, I got my target right there, right in the castle, right?
Right.
But that's a pretty spectacular piece of headgear.
So basically, it's a guy who served, and he wants a memento he can display on his shelf or something to remember his, guys he was fighting with in his service.
That was a souvenir of his service in World War One, basically. Pretty
That's
cool.
Really cool. That is really cool. Wow, so much cool stuff. This has been exciting.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I mean, I like hanging. You guys are fun. I love hanging out with you guys. We're both from Jersey, obviously. You know,
I know. I can
Jersey
hear you. I hear your accent, and I feel at home because you clearly are from New Jersey. Oh yeah, there we go. I've got that record, "Sand in the Face." We both played bass in punk rock bands in New Jersey back in the day. There we go.
That is an interesting factoid of Peter Karlan. I did spend the early '80s at CBGB's in Manhattan. Don't remember much of it, but I was there. You know.
I spent a little bit of time there myself. Not slightly after you, but not much. We probably overlapped a little bit.
Right.
So
it was fun.
Oh yeah. So we are going to give $1,000 to a charity of your choice as our guest. It looks like you actually picked two charities. I think here we have the James Mcgraw Second Chance Scholarship and Love and Hope in Action. So can you tell us a little bit about the charities you've chosen here?
No, those two charities are very close to my heart. Sorry about that. But the James Mccraw scholarship is a guy who is a Marine. When I went to my graduate program at Palm Beach Atlantic University, when I graduated, this guy James Mcgraw was graduated posthumously in the same graduating ceremony, but he was an undergrad. I got my master's in organizational leadership. He was getting his bachelor's degree in the same major, but unfortunately, he passed away in a training accident. He was in a Marine. He was with the South Florida Anglico unit, air gunfire liaison company, and he passed away. And I approached the college and I said that we need to
honor this guy.
Basically, do something for him. So. That's the one. The other one is La Haya, which is Love and Hope in Action, and I serve on the board of directors of that agency, and it's in South Florida because I lived in South Florida for 16 years, in Stewart, Florida, and it's a fantastic organization that serves the homeless and indigent and hurting in Martin County, Florida, in Stewart. But they serve the 4-county area, and I worked down there a long time. I served as a volunteer at that ministry for a long time, and I serve on the board of directors humbly.
Oh, good for you! Wow, so not just giving monetarily, but giving of your time as well. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes, yeah. I serve on the selection committee for the scholarship committee for James Mcgraw, and I serve on the board of directors of La Haya.
That's great. Well, this has been a great conversation. Like I said, we could go forever because every time I turn, I see something else here, and I want to know what it is or why it is. You know, so many crazy guns and swords and things I've seen here recently. You know, I didn't know that they made a bayonet that was a shovel. Like, I'm seeing all these wild things that you keep finding for us. So it's been a real treat. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate that you're New Jersey, you talk like me, so it's been really great.
You know, I lived in California for 6 years, and I lived in Florida for 16 years, and I still can't kick it. I mean, I don't know what to do. Yeah. You know, yeah. I guess once it's in you, it's in you. You know.
It is. My grandmother, God bless her, would have been 94 yesterday if she was still alive, but she lived in New Jersey for about 60 something years, and she's still parked car, so it's I get it. Once it's you can take the boy from New Jersey, you can't take the Jersey out of the boy, right?
Yeah, You got it.
Well, thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your all your experience and knowledge and love for these historic military items. Look forward to working a lot more with you and learning a lot more with you. It's a real treat to have you here today. And thank you, everybody else, for joining me today here on Coin Snacks with Jack. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We're streaming every week on Facebook and YouTube, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. So tune in for your weekly dose of numismatics and other collectibles. And we'll see you next week for another episode. And I promise, last week we had sports, this week we had military. Next week we're going to talk coins again. Next week we are featuring the designer of the new reverse of the new Type 2 American Silver Eagle, Emily Damstra. So don't miss that one. See you next week.
Thanks for watching Coin Snacks with Jack. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Coin Snacks. Visit us at rarecollectiblestv.com.